I'm still parked down by the lake, 80 miles from Santa Fe. Gonna call my friend Paul Baylor. Do 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 do.
Drew.
Paul, how you doing?
Oh, not too bad. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Hey, how do I sound this week?
You sound much better.
I worked on an apology that I think I think is owed to the listeners.
You know, I think all things considered, it came out fine. It was just a little different, so I want to give everyone a little bit of a heads up. But
well, you know what's interesting is the way you sound right now is how I feel I sounded on the podcast.
Yeah,
when you recorded it.
Skype destroys everything.
Yeah. I'm glad we do the separate audio, the double ender, as we called it, or the double header, or the double Dutch, or whatever the hell it was. I'm glad that we do that, because I think the quality of the podcast really is much better.
Yes.
Okay, let me explain what happened, because I don't think that part made the show.
It did not.
It did not. We had a test call right before we kicked everything off, because I had the bright idea that I needed a new computer case, which I totally didn't need a new computer case, but I had a bee in my bonnet about getting a new computer case to potentially alleviate some of my thermal issues, because when you play a lot of video games or do a lot of things on your computer, you know, and I have a big honking graphics card in there, heat does build up. And the case I have still is, because I still have it, is a good case. It's just a case that is designed for your own water cooling solutions, like not one you buy off the shelf, one you assemble yourself. So you have the reservoir and you have the pumps, and you can, you know, have water cooling on your memory and your processor on your video card. And there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance. It looks really cool, and it's very, very efficient if you do it right. But that's not what I have. I just have an off-the-shelf CPU cooler. And The case I had was kind of narrow, and half of the case was for your motherboard and all your peripherals and everything. And the back half of the case was all cable management. So I have upgraded to a slightly wider body case that is already... It doesn't have as much tempered glass as my other case, and it probably, on balance, isn't as nice as the case I had, but I am seeing better thermal performance. Anyway, that is all to say that when I did that, my computer wasn't working. What was happening was I thought that I had fried, in the process of taking everything out of my other computer case and putting it in the new computer case, I thought that I had fried my CPU cooler. Turns out I'm just not really good at remembering what connections go where, and there was a missed power connection. Everything's fine. Everything's good. I'm back on the regular computer in a non-echoey room with a much better microphone, and everything's happy. And I just want to say that because, listen, besties, you listen to the show. You appreciate the work that Paul puts into the show and the audio quality that we give you as amateur podcasters. I get it. We're really good at it when it all works. The problem is that a garbage human that, you know, as a garbage human that is very impulsive and prone to these fits of, well, I'm just going to swing everything on my computer case tonight. That's the price you pay knowing me. So just be advised that there's going to be times where I do something incredibly stupid and incredibly dumb that may or may not impact the quality of this show.
It's bound to happen. We do not record in a studio, so
no, we don't.
Yeah, it's going to happen, but the show must go on.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Paul. I'm sorry that I put the undue process of whatever it is you tried to do to clean up that audio. That was very unfair of me.
It was all good. It was all good.
I'm a grown man that made poopy in his diaper, and I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you.
No, it's hey, we're just doing our best.
Yeah, we are doing our best, and that's a callback. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So, I have a little bit of a follow-up from last episode.
Mm-hmm.
I went and I took I guess DISC is what it's called, the DISC personality assessment.
Yes.
I need your help, Drew, because there are parts of my assessment that make me sound like a sociopath.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Okay, before you jump in, there's one thing I want to front load with you.
okay.
Did you come out to be the same? You assumed that you were going to wind up somewhere on the scale that I ended up. Did you?
Okay, so what was you were a DC?
CD.
CD. Okay. I got a DI. So I was strong with dominance and influence.
So you were in the, if you took the same test I did or one like it, so the circle is divided up into 4 quadrants, and I believe that C, which I was CD, C is in the bottom left, D is in the upper left.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
I is in the upper right, and I forget what the bottom right is. Wait, hold on. This is easy. This is the logic problem. So C, D, I,
S.
S. That's the one.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
DICS. So yeah.
Okay.
Dominance, influence. Anywho, it's not super important. So it described my kind of profile as being the inspirational pattern. And I picked some paragraphs, and I'm afraid that it's less like inspirational, like, woo. It's more inspirational, like future cult leader. Okay.
Well, is that the worst thing in the world?
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
if you want to be a leader, I mean, I guess that's pretty good. So hold on real quick. I just want to make sure we're doing this. So I ended up as a CD, and you were a DI?
DI.
Okay, so you were more shaded in the D section of the pie, of the
Yes.
pie chart, and you were
Second
were you
in
close,
influence. Yeah.
So were you closer to the middle or closer to the edge?
I'm closer to the middle.
Okay, yeah, okay. So basically, you're one quadrant up from me, is what it looks like.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So
right.
I'm going to read some of these to you. And a lot of them start really good, and then they kind of take a dark turn. Okay. All right. So it reads, as someone with the inspirational pattern, you may often display a dazzling ability to persuade others. Okay. The tools you use to achieve this goal can vary. Often you can be quite charming and convince people to do what you want by strength of pure likability. Okay, not so bad, not so bad. Okay. At other times, however, you may employ obvious intimidation to get your point across. Usually the most important factor for you is control, which you tend to seek over your environment or your audience. So that took a little bit of a turn.
Okay, so to recap, you're a likable guy.
Yes.
You influence people, but when the likability doesn't work, you what exactly?
Just kind of take over. Just kind of take over. Yeah, yeah. I believe it says employ obvious intimidation.
So what I'm hearing is that on the D&D sheet of Paul Baylor, your CHA score is pretty high.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, okay. This is the part that kind of makes me sounds like a sociopath. As part of your tendency to persuade people, you may downplay your own need for affection. This method of maintaining some distance may be part of your conscious attempt to modify the thoughts and actions of others.
Okay, hold on. Read that again.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
As part of your tendency to persuade people, you may downplay your own need for affection. This method of maintaining some distance may be part of your conscious attempt to modify the thoughts and actions of others.
Oh,
so I think it's what it's saying.
Don't worry about me, kids. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yep.
Let's talk about you.
Let's talk about you. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I got a few more here. Okay. This one's pretty good. Okay. You tend to be very good at motivating people and initiating projects in your work environment. You are likely to use your impressive verbal skills and your natural ability to give others direction when taking on these challenges. Okay, I get that. I mean, right.
That's a positive. Yeah, that's positive.
Yeah, okay. All right. To direct people towards your goals, you are likely to shower them with compliments or make demands upon them, depending on what you think will be more effective. You may, okay, here we go. You may even actively manipulate others to get your way. Among the times when you can be the most persuasive is when you are seeking assistance. In these cases, you may show a gift for getting others to do repetitive or time-consuming tasks.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So, okay. So,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
all right. So, I just had a moment of clarity where my initial response to that is no, Paul, that's not you. But I'm wondering if it's a Stockholm situation here where, like, I don't know you've done it for so long that that's not, like, maybe you're really doing it and I don't know it. So,
Yeah.
okay. It might not Stockholm syndrome. Is that a Nightingale, Florence Nightingale effect? I don't know. I don't know the difference. One of those two.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Like maybe you've manipulated me for so long that you're like this weird, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like mind flayer, where you're like in my head and I don't know it.
Okay. So this next one, you have to tell me because I feel like this one is the most me. Okay. If you are frustrated in your drive to achieve your goals, you are likely to become quarrelsome or belligerent. This is because you probably see aggression as a legitimate form of expression. In addition, you may have no hesitation to discipline others or override your colleagues' decisions when you see it as necessary.
I don't disagree. I know.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad
suffer bullcrap. Right? Yeah.
No, you don't. And neither do I.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Don't waste my time.
Yep.
It was kind of my theme, and I think you're a lot in the same way because I know that you and I have been in meetings where someone would belabor a point, or somebody would try to persuade you, and you would say no, and they would try to persuade you again, and you would say no. And then that kind of third time, 3 strikes and you're out, you would unload a little bit. And you know what?
Yes.
I hate to say it at the risk of sounding harsh. I think that is a perfect, like, first of all, anger is a valid expression. You are allowed to be angry.
I see. I agree. Yeah. Sometimes I'm angry and like it says, I see aggression as a legitimate form of expression.
Yes. Aggression is a legitimate form of expression. Now, aggression in trying to do what you think is, oh boy, that's a really problematic statement. Aggression for aggression's sake is never good. That's toxic. But there has to be a point where if somebody is increasingly agitating you, or increasingly failing to meet your expectations, or increasingly trying to go around you or through you, or you just know that what they're trying to do isn't going to be good for not necessarily your goals, but the goals of, say, a team or a project or something. I think it's okay to get a little snippy. I do. I really believe that. And I know people can be sensitive to that. But if done correctly, and again, as long as your first response is biting somebody's head off, it's on them if they keep pressing, or they keep messing up, or they keep not doing the thing that needs to be done. Like, I think there is a threshold. I truly believe that.
All right, I have one more. One more paragraph I picked out. Again, this one starts good, and then it kind of takes a turn. Your colleagues probably admire, and like you. Okay, that's good. All right. However, you may still have the potential to strike fear into others. Either way, you are likely to tap into whatever emotional responses you provoke in others so that you can better persuade them.
This is like a compliment sandwich that fell on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, and there's other things, and there's it's mostly spot on. It gave me a few things to think about, but like it's just kind of like this section I mostly pulled from was kind of describing my work habits, and some of them were a little like, oh, that's nice. Oh no. Oh.
Yeah, I could see how you could view this as a little problematic. And the wording on some of those is like, hey, here, buddy, listen, let's have a talk. But Paul, listen, just like I said when I don't ever mind, I don't think these things are designed to give someone a tool to manage you to change these behaviors. I think these are the behaviors that make up you. And if they were negative, I don't think you'd be where you're at.
Right. Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I'm not perfect. I know sometimes that, it. Yeah. When I'm convinced that I am right about a particular thing, there is very little that's going to stand in my way. Like,
yeah, I mean, likewise. So I did hear some commonalities with some of the things that I went over with you on mine. But here's the thing. Even though some of mine stung a little bit, I was okay with the results. Are you okay with your results?
You know what? Yes. Yeah. Like, yeah. I'm relatively happy. Like, there's lots of good things. Like, the one I went through kind of gives me, like, you know, a list of adjectives that probably describes me, and those are relatively nice, and they're pretty spot on. You know, there's, except for, you know, like, well, it says, you know, I'm probably very fidgety, and turns out I am. You know, very self-confident, outgoing, you know, pleasant, trusting. Well, there is some parts where it thinks that I'm probably a little too trusting of people.
I don't know. I don't know if you're necessarily more trusting with people, but I've seen your patience stretch way beyond any reasonable amount of patience that anybody should have.
Yeah. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt in the beginning. You know, assume that everyone's going to be able to do what they say they do in a competent fashion. That has bitten me in the butt before.
I think you're way more quick to forgive than I am.
I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the undertones of what I'm hearing here is that, well, I don't know. I don't know if there's any language to that effect in your document, but I truly feel that even though you and I have a lot of things in common, I can definitely hold a grudge. Right? I have never really heard you hold a grudge, with like the exception of like one very specific person. And I think you know who I'm talking about. But don't worry, everybody listening. I guarantee you that person doesn't listen to the podcast.
Absolutely
if you're listening to this, trust me, it's not you.
No.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think you got bad results. I don't think any of these are typically bad results. It's just like, hey, buddy, this is you. Whether you realize it or not, these are things to be aware of, and it's up to you to use them. Did your report have a section where it was, here's how you can deal with other people of the other types?
If it does, I skimmed over that. No, I don't believe mine does. It does kind of explain the other, like, common patterns, but so maybe there's some stuff in there. There was a lot of charts, and that's what,
yeah, it can get overwhelming pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
It can definitely get overwhelming. Cool. Well, so, okay, I'm glad you did that. How much did it end up costing you, if you don't mind me asking?
I spent like $70.
Wow. That's dedication.
Yeah, there was one that was like $25, but it was like, it boasted like there was only like 23 questions. I was like, 23 questions isn't enough to capture the complexity of Paul.
Yeah, Jones barbecue and disc assessment, right? Like you want a good one.
Exactly. And it was fine. It was fun. You know, it didn't take me that long to take, and I got the results quick, and yeah, no regrets.
Your results while you wait. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, I am glad that you did it, and it was fun for you to share the results. Is there anything else you wanna talk about? Like, is there anything else you wanna?
No, I think I'm good. I'm just, I'm trying to convince myself that, I'm not going to lead a cult in my future, but.
I don't necessarily think you'll lead a cult.
I mean, I just, it's nice to know that I have that in my back pocket in case this whole like IT thing doesn't work out.
How long have you been working in IT now?
Oh, geez. I'd have to do math.
Okay, I'll wait.
It's probably going on 25 years now.
You're up there, right?
Yeah.
Because let's see, I forget.
No. It's probably actually closer to 20 years. Yeah, closer to 20 years.
I was going to say, because you're not that much older than me, and I think I've got like 17 or 18 under my belt because I'm 40 with an asterisk.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think you're, 2 or 3 years older than me?
Yes, 2 years older. So, yeah, so I'm thinking I'm hitting 20. Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm right on the cusp of 17 or 18.
Yeah.
Now, before you became the awesome DevOps slash manager person you are now, you did consulting for a while, right?
Yeah. My very first like baby Paul job was consulting. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And then I spent some time working as a full-time employee for an insurance company that laid me off via an intranet page. That's a story for another time. And then I consulted. I traveled for quite a few years before I ended up in my current job. Yeah, and the company I worked for, they did basically, if you weren't like a Fortune 500 company, they wouldn't even talk to you. So
I don't understand. I don't understand what you mean.
So if you weren't,
you mean from the consulting firm?
yeah. If you weren't like a major bank or a pretty significant company that everybody has heard of, you were not willing to like the consulting company was not even willing to talk to you. I worked for
going after the whales.
Yeah, I worked for many banks during the kind of right before the mortgage collapse. I built a few. I built a couple, two and a half new mortgage systems. That was the hot thing to do, and most of those banks are no longer with us, or at least the mortgage part. Yeah, they were sold, or that was fun. So yeah, like I apologize for playing my part in the housing market collapse.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, but I spent a lot of time doing consulting. And that's where I had a career manager at that consulting company who kind of saw potential in me. And I was your typical like snot-nosed, head down, eating pizza, drinking Mountain Dew, outcomes code kind of guy. And he really taught me the lesson that if I really wanted to excel in this industry in my career, I needed to focus on my social skills, because everything in IT, the hardest part is people, and dealing with people and being able to just communicate like a human being. And he really pushed that. So
use your mouth words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, use your mouth words.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
well, I think obviously you have worked tremendously on it, because you're able to hold conversations on professionally recorded podcasts.
Oh, sometimes.
Okay. So before you became IT superhero that you are now, what kind of jobs did you have in high school?
Oh, geez. My first real job, I had an aunt who worked for a bank. And she got me a temporary teller position where I would basically, during the summer, as people would take vacation at the banks, I would go in and kind of fill in with them. So I was a bank teller, which it's a surprisingly easy job. If you can count and have any kind of basic computer skills.
Well, okay, so interestingly enough, so again, I don't have any math skills, but I'm going to assume that you did this when you were in your late teens?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's darn near 22 years ago, and if I'm doing my math correctly, that is late 90s?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Did the banks have computers at the teller windows back then?
They did. They were very simple, like monochromatic.
They were like
big
terminals, right?
Exactly.
They were
more like
terminals than like yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was kind of scary being, a teenager, not even able to drink, and like you go to work in the morning and someone hands you like, a drawer with like $6,000 worth of cash.
Wow.
Yeah, it's frightening.
Did you ever screw up?
The biggest mistake I've ever made was like I think only like $12. And
wow.
it was just like meh.
How do you live with yourself?
I know. Most of the time, like, to be honest, like, the banks are like, no, you have to be precise, and any variance needs to be reported, right? You have to document everything. Well, most of the branches had like, I remember the one that I mostly stayed at. There was this nice potted plant sitting kind of behind all the tellers. and if it was a fake plant, and if you lifted out the plant, it was just full of money. So if you were like,
what?
Yeah, if you were just like a few bucks short or your buck over, they would just like either put it in the pot or take it. It's kind of like, give a penny, take a penny, but for bank tellers. So if you were a little bit off, you just went to the pot and just fixed it. And just fixed it.
So there was a plant with a false bottom
that
had probably hundreds of dollars in it.
Probably not hundreds, but yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Next time I go into the bank, I'm kicking over every plant.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
You're gonna get arrested, but yeah.
What, for kicking over a plant? I mean, I think I'd be asked to leave.
Yeah.
Like, I might be able to get one or two down before they ask me to leave. Now, if I try to go for the third at that point, that's probably cop town.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could probably knock over a few. Well, okay, I shouldn't use knock over and bank in the same. I could probably tip over a few plants.
Yes.
Words matter. Paul.
Yeah. Words matter. Now, what was your first job?
Okay. My first job is I worked at a grocery store.
I also worked at a grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, like, because I'm fickle, because I have a mouth on me, they didn't really know what to do with me. So my first job at the grocery store is I was technically a stock boy, but I hardly ever stocked shelves. Paul, have you ever been to a grocery store and looked down an aisle and seen all of the boxes and all of the products brought to the front of the shelves?
Yeah.
There's not springs behind those things. Like, someone has to do that.
Okay.
That's what I did. That was called blocking. So blocking would be, as consumers would come to the store and buy, bags of marshmallows or soup or canned vegetables or cereal or whatever it may be, jars of hot sauce, I don't know, whatever, as one does at grocery stores. They take them from the front usually and there are gaps that form in the rows of shelves and products as you go down the supermarket aisle. And this is not apparently, from people who do studies on these things, that is not a good look for a grocery store. So the idea is that at several points during the day, you want to kind of walk up and down aisles and block these things out, like pull them forward, make them all line up nice and neat. And as the newer kid that started there, that's what I was assigned to do. And occasionally I would get to push a cart to and from the storeroom and stock shelves. But that was typically reserved for the kids that had worked there a little bit longer. There was like this unspoken seniority for that type of thing. And when it turns out that I wasn't good at doing that basic job, but they realized that I played on a computer all day, they somehow had the presence of mind to make me a cashier.
Okay.
So then I transitioned into being a cashier, which, getting to talk to customers and have fun was good. I goofed off a lot. I definitely didn't take the job seriously at all. We would routinely break into the assistant, well, not the owner, but like the kind of the main manager that ran the show. We would break into his office and we would steal the label maker. And we would print new names for ourselves. So for a while we were Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I got a talking to because turns out I didn't date anybody in high school and I was really lonely. So I printed out a name tag that says, I'm lonely, date me, and had my phone number. That was not good.
Oh, okay.
Then I made one that said my name isn't important. Like I got into a lot of trouble. But I got to be a cashier, and that was pretty fun, and I was pretty decent at it. And much like your thing, occasionally, like you would give too much or too little change, so you'd be off. So you'd show up for the shift, and they would give you the drawer full of money. It probably wasn't thousands of dollars, but it was probably a couple $100s in coins and bills and things. And then you would ring people up. The thing that was a huge pain in the butt were the secret shoppers. Like they would come through your lane, and then you get a talking to, like, hey, you missed that whole bag of dog food on the bottom of the cart. And I'm like, I'm in high school and I'm exhausted. Like, leave me alone. Like, yeah. So I did that for a while. And then they also had me working part-time in the lottery booth at the grocery store, which was really interesting.
A lottery booth?
Yeah, so at the grocery store I worked is they had an office. So like all the cashiers would come in and out of the office, and that office had like the safe, and that's where they would count. And like if you needed a money order or you were doing like a return or something, like that's where you would go. And then in And then like behind that is where they kept all the cigarettes. So like if you needed cigarettes, you had to walk into the office and you'd have to get a carton or a pack of cigarettes and then take it back out. And then right behind that was the lottery booth. And the lottery booth was a booth that had the Pennsylvania State Lottery sanctioned machine in it, and then a window, like a teller window. And what you would do, and if you would come to me and buy a lottery ticket, you would tell me the numbers. I would punch them in the machine. It would spit out a little card with a barcode and the numbers. And typically people would like play it right before the drawing, and then they'd come back, because the thing that was cool is the machine also had a barcode reader. So you could give me a stack of lottery tickets and I could feed the machine, and it would basically say, you owe this person $22. And then, too bad that they spent $200 on tickets, but whatever.
Right.
It's a problem, right? People have gambling problems. Anyway, so I did that for a while. That was considerably harder than being a cashier, even though you had very set amount of money you were working with. Like to play, like $1 would buy you a base play. If you wanted the 4 number instead of the 3 number, that was $2. Scratch offs were $1, $2, $5, or $10. Like there weren't weird denominations where you were dealing with a lot of coins, which is typically where I messed up the most with the cashier job. But I would constantly either short or go over by like tens of dollars. Even though the machine was very, very good at telling you, like, this is your change, for whatever reason, working in that lottery booth is where I made the most mistakes. And yeah, it was interesting. It was really interesting. And if things got busy, like after the drawing, like you would kind of clean up, and then I would go out and help be a cashier for a few hours, and then I would go home and get up and go to school. And then when I was in college, my first job in college was a computer lab assistant. So at the University of Pittsburgh, I worked in the computer labs. I did that all 4 years of school. I started in the second half of my freshman year because I realized I needed a job when I had chapped lips and couldn't afford chapstick.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, I probably need a job. And I took that job. I did that for 2 years, and then I got promoted to lab manager. I got to be in charge of one of the labs, which really just came down to making the schedules and keeping supplies stocked. It wasn't anything major. I did that for 2 years. I was also an RA in college, so I did both of those things in college at the same time, which was kind of rough, but thankfully it was kind of on the tail end of my time, and like all my hard classes and big credit loads were kind of done. Then I got, when I was in school over the summers, I would work down on campus, but then I got an internship at a company here in Ohio. It was a mail order pharmacy company. Out of school, they hired me, and the 11 years I spent there, I started as a help desk jockey. So I was, lugging printers up and down stairs on my back. I was wiring Unisys terminals and IBM terminals and punching down connections for phones. At the time, almost everything there, and this was early 2000s, were still like terminals and, Novell networking. There were very few Windows computers. In fact, in our room, like our kind of room where all the techs kind of hung out, there were only 2 desktops, which wasn't a big deal. Like a lot of people had to share stuff, but we were busy enough that you weren't really surfing the internet. There was always stuff to do. There was always projects going on. When I was there, they did a big data room upgrade at the facility that we were working on. And I would go back and forth during Christmas and do things, and then they hired me on full time. I continued to do that for about a year. And then I had an opportunity because I went to school to be kind of a developer / information science guy. I was able to parlay that into my first development job where I was developing some internal websites and databases and working in Lotus Notes and doing things to support a particular aspect of the business. And I got to make databases to track all kinds of things. We got to do some web-based development, some database development, some console application development. And, I was there for 11 years. I had really, really good bosses, really, really good mentors. And then the guy that I was reporting to kind of abruptly passed away, which was really hard. And I transitioned to somebody else who was a great boss too. I'm not saying he was a bad boss. He just wasn't as good, and I wasn't as close to him as I was with my other boss. And then I was there. Then that company got acquired. All the leadership got axed. and I fell into a new organization. I worked for a guy that was just not a good guy. I worked for him for about 8 months, and I said, I don't want to work for you anymore. But the company found me a different position, which was nice. And then I became a manager where I was managing about 3 to 4 analysts working underneath me. And I started to get away from the day-to-day technical stuff. I was still doing a lot of break fix on some of the applications that I developed, but I had people reporting to me that kind of picked up that slack. And I didn't dislike being a manager. I just didn't like the type of work I was doing, and the merger wasn't going super well. And I was just like, you know what? I think it's time I cash out. And that's when I had my interview where you work, and you got to meet me for the first time. And then I did that for 6 years, and now I work for Microsoft.
All right, so I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit.
Okay.
I want to tell you about the most, and I believe I've actually told you this story before. I would like to tell you the most interesting job I've had. And technically, it was the job I had right before I kind of got my break into IT. I was a mascot for Hometown Buffet. Now, Hometown Buffet, they're all over the place. I actually think they're dying. It was kind of like a Golden Corral, but maybe a little bit more upscale, but not really. I believe it was every Thursday and Sunday night, they would have family night, which basically meant that me, this individual, would dress up in a bee costume. I actually found a picture of what my costume looked like. I'll put it in the show notes for you. I can.
Why isn't that your Twitter profile?
So you have to. I was actually in the old. If you look now, they've kind of updated the look. I was in the older costume, which is a lot more creepy and a lot harder to find pictures of on the internet.
So you're telling me they're still abusing employees with this mascot idea?
Oh, I believe so.
Okay.
So I'm in this gigantic. So I got these big comic oversized sneakers, essentially tights on my pants, a bee body, a green jacket, an oversized, like human-looking bee face wearing this little hat.
Oh, so nightmare fuel.
Yeah. There was it was super hot, so they had this fan that ran off a 9-volt battery in the nose.
Yeah, you're right. I bet it was super hot.
What I would do at the restaurant is I would hand out balloons and stickers to kids. Now, every once in a while, there'd be a kid who'd just be like just freaked out, and then I would literally have to hide in the closet until the manager would knock on the door saying it was safe to come back out. So I would hand out like balloons, I'd hand out stickers, I'd walk around. I wasn't allowed to talk. That was strictly forbidden. But this gigantic head is essentially just one giant blind spot. You can't see anything. So I can't tell you how many times where I'd be walking and some kid decided that he wanted to come up and give me a hug and just kind of come literally right underneath my radar and just grab onto my legs as I'm walking. And I'm like, I'm starting to fall and try not to kill the kid. And I mean, it was cute. I also did a handful of parades where I got to ride in a car and wave. At the time, Hometown Buffet, every year at the Columbus Zoo, they do this thing where like local restaurants come and give out samples of food, where I would work that day and walk around the zoo and hand out coupons and stickers and balloons. Yeah, that was eventually they gave me a cashier job. I didn't have to be the mascot anymore. Mostly because I think I barely fit in the suit. It was really designed for someone who was not like 6'1". Like I really pushed the extreme.
Hold on a second. The picture you linked me.
Yes.
Is that you?
That is not me.
Okay.
I do have a picture of me in the suit, but I do not know where that is, and I probably should burn it. But that is the costume that I wore.
Huh. So if you talk to the kids, would they give you the hose, or what would they do to punish you?
You know what? I believe, much like the characters at like Disney World aren't supposed to talk because they don't want to ruin the, fascination of oh, I saw the bee twice and he had two different voices. He was a boy one time and a girl another time. Like, it was just against the rules. And I'm like, you know what? Fine. You know, yeah. 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 There was a video I had to watch.
Oh my God. If I had this job when I was a kid, there's no way I would have made it past week 2.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have in the past given me really solid buffet advice, and I typically am not a person who visits many buffets, if ever. But you have definitely given me good advice for visiting any type of buffet situation. Anything you want to tell our listeners that isn't good? That isn't going to make anybody sick.
You really, nothing at a buffet goes to waste. So as you approach a dish, you really have to think to yourself, is it possible for this to be made of leftovers? If it is, you probably want to avoid it. Things like soup. That's probably just whatever, like some other meat that they had left over turned into the soup. Bread pudding, as delicious as it is just the leftover stale bread. We had things on the buffet that I personally found disgusting that people would devour. Things like chicken liver and onions.
So what's the worst? What's the worst buffet customer?
Oh, okay. So we had this couple, and I remember this because at that time I was working the cashier, and they started to come. They would come not every day, but they would come multiple times a week. Our manager called them the 2%ers because he would know that when they were in the restaurant, his
oh my God, why do we call our podcast the 2%ers?
Yeah. His profits would drop 2% when they were in the store, in the restaurant. They would come. So there's kind of this sweet spot. So the buffet, we served lunch and we served dinner, and the lunch prices were lower, but we had a limited menu, like no carved meats, nothing like that. And then dinner would come, and then, the prices would go up, and, we'd put out more food. Well, they would come like 15 minutes before the end of lunch. So they would be there for lunch and then stay for the transition. I kid you not, they would start at the salad bar. And say you wanted some onions on your salad. A normal human being there'd probably be a spoon or some tongs. They would reach in there. They'd grab, a large handful, maybe, if you really liked onions, and put it on your salad. Not these people. This couple. They would literally take the entire tray, the whole bin of onions or whatever they wanted, and dump it on their salad.
Okay. All right. So they have a taste for onions. Okay.
Yeah, or
right.
Literally everything. They would make this huge mound of salad. They would devour their salad, and by that time, it was dinner. And these people just ate, and they ate, and they ate. They didn't tip either. Not that you have to tip at a buffet, but, there's waitresses that come out and get you drinks and clean your table. It's always nice to leave a couple bucks. They didn't. So they would literally just, devour the buffet. And then they would stop. And when they were done, they would leave. They would walk 2 or 3 times around the building, for fitness. They probably consumed 3,000 to 4,000 calories each, but they walked around the building 2 or 3 times and then got in their car and left.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You know what? No shame in that game.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, before I'm fascinated, I remain fascinated by your buffet experience. So let's say I wanted to be the next 2%er, but I can't necessarily eat the volume of food that I used to be able to eat. Are there bigger ticket items that I can use to sort of achieve the 2%er status as opposed to just eating everything?
I mean, at the buffet, every night we had a different kind of premier entree, and usually it was carved roast beef or ribs. We didn't do anything like steak, but it was always something like sometimes there was like prime rib, things like that. Like, go for that stuff, right? Like, mac and cheese is cheap. Mashed potatoes are cheap. That salad bar is cheap. Go for the meats. Go for the meats.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Making a note. Making a note for later.
I have to cut this part out.
Well, there's your title.
Oh, I gotta make it out. Yeah.
There's your title.
46 minutes uncontrollable laughter.
We should leave it in. I think it's cute to leave in.
Okay. Oh. For those who are wondering, Drew just decided on the title for the show, and I just saw him writing in the document, I'm sure they'll go for the meats, and I lost it. Lost it.
That's a pretty good one. Oh, boy. Okay. Yeah. I was going to do something with the 2%er thing, and then it just had a burst of inspiration. See, we think on our feet on this show. As much planning as we usually do, sometimes we do think on our feet. Anything else about former jobs or buffet things before we move on?
No. I think I've done quite enough.
Think we hit it?
Yeah.
Think we hit it? Yeah, so bottom line, don't go to a buffet. Just don't do it.
No, yeah.
Even if you're there for the bees.
Just think that, like, you go to the buffet and you're like, I'm going to spend like $12 and I'm going to eat them out. Like, I'm going to eat more than, like, no, the food is so cheap.
The house always wins.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. The house always wins. They charge so little because the food is just garbage.
Yeah, I think the last buffet I technically went to, well, hold on a second. Let me think about this. I'm trying to decide if the last buffet I went to was either when I went on that cruise or if it was a Chinese buffet that I went to. Oh, man, I'm really struggling with my timeline. Anyway, that's probably the last buffet situation I got into. And, like, buffet lines are pretty gross on their own. I can't decide if it's worse or better if you go to a buffet on a cruise ship.
I have never been on a cruise.
Because
I don't know. Yeah.
Because the food isn't trapped in there with the bacteria. The bacteria is trapped in there with the food. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Man, those are floating germ pods. Okay. All right, here we go. So, next topic. I'm going to yank this. I didn't do as much prep work as I typically do for the show just because I've been a little bit busy. Bestie Nikki sent an email, and she said, Drew, you mentioned that you were reading The Handmaid's Tale. That is one of my favorite books of all time. I'd love to hear what you think. And she also says, I know you touched on books, but it's always a great topic. Favorite books or book series? So, I think that's a pretty good thing. I know we've talked on the comic books visual novel thing. Why don't I talk a little bit about The Handmaid's Tale, and then I want you, Paul, to tell me kind of what you read this summer.
Oh, it's sad, but I will do so.
There's nothing sad about it. So I made the decision to read The Handmaid's Tale, which is a book by Margaret Atwood, and it was a really good book. So for those of you that haven't read it, I don't necessarily want to give anything away. And it's also a series on Amazon, which I have not watched yet, and I have a desire to watch it. But every time I turn on Amazon Prime, I just watch The Wire. So The Handmaid's Tale is a really good book, and it hit a lot of good notes for me. It's kind of this dystopian, futurish thing where basically something happens, right? And side note, I love books like this because it had a very strong like World War Z thing where like obviously something bad happened in the universe that this book is written in, but they don't really tell you what it was. There are points in the book where it talks about kind of the things that led up to why the world is the way that it is, but they don't give you specifics about how it happened. It's just one day people woke up and women are now basically second-class citizens for the most part in this book. And it's really powerful because there's a lot of really powerful overtones in the book. And I felt that it was a really good read. It's a really unique writing style as well. It almost comes across as like a stream of consciousness kind of thing. And if you read to the end of the book, you kind of find out why that is. It's not a very long book. It's not a very hard read. I recommend that if you haven't read it, you should probably read it. It's really, really good. The basic premise is that in the future, the United States isn't really the United States anymore. It's kind of this theocracy-based state where women have assigned duties, right? You are either a wife or you're a handmaid. And if you're a handmaid, you are basically there for the purposes of procreation because birth rates are way down. So your job as a handmaid is to basically be used to try to get pregnant and to carry on life. I'm really overly generalizing because I don't want to talk about it too much. Not that there's a big twist, but the way that you kind of discover how things work in this universe is kind of the good parts of the book. So if you're looking for something to read, I mean, I think the book is like $6 new on Amazon if you want a hardcover. I think it might only, I think if you're on the Kindle, I think it's even free if you're a Prime member. If you're on Kindle, like you can just download it and read it. It's not, like I said, it's not a very long book, not a very hard read. Really, really fascinating, and I really, really enjoyed it. So, you know, Nikki, I realize it's one of your favorite books. I want you to know that I also enjoyed it, and there is a sequel to the book coming out called The Testaments. That's not due out till September. I think it's due out in about 2 weeks. And that will be, if I'm looking at the Amazon page, it'll be $14. Also, pursuant to our last discussion about comic books and visual novels, there is also a graphic novel of The Handmaid's Tale that I just had pop up on my Amazon feed that is $13.
Sold.
So, yeah. I mean, I would probably read the book. I would probably also, I'm just want to click through and see some of the pictures from the graphic novel. Oh, that's pretty cool. Very cool. Oh, yeah. Very, very neat. So, yeah, if you're looking for something to read, Paul, you could do worse. So I really enjoyed it. So, Paul, having said all that, what have you read over the summer?
So, first of all, full stop disclaimer. I mostly read trashy fantasy and fantasy and science fiction novels. I'm kind of going to expand the word summer because I think I actually started reading this before the summer, but I think I finished it like early June. I finally read the book Lords of Chaos: The Bloody Rise of the Satanic Metal Underground. So this is a nonfiction book. It was published in 2003. It's not a very good book. I feel like the author... So the premise of the book is it basically follows and kind of tracks the rise of Satan and satanic themes in heavy metal music. It starts looking at, the underground blues early on, and then, the early rock and the Rolling Stones, and then finally bands like Black Sabbath. The reason I read the book is there's a good, maybe a fourth of it that covers this band called Mayhem. And they actually just recently made a movie out of the section of the book called Lords of Chaos that covers the band Mayhem. Mayhem I guess still are technically, a Norwegian black metal band. They started in the late 80s, early 90s. One of the first really influential black metal bands. And if you kind of remember around the same time, the Satanic Panic, and everyone's worried about Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music and these musicians killing each other and burning down churches, where most of those stories was one band, and it was Mayhem.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I had never heard of this band.
Yes. So one of the members, his name was Varg. He kind of took things really too seriously, and he burnt down many churches across Norway, and then famously actually killed the founding member of the band, Euronymous. He claimed it was self-defense, but he stabbed the guy 300 times.
Yeah. Boy, this guy just kept falling on my knife. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So that was one of the first books that I read this summer, because I kind of wanted to really get into the Mayhem story. Being a fan of black metal and Mayhem's earlier works. Then This is a little bit embarrassing. I read well, I've only read 2 out of the 3 books because they're not very good. I played Dungeons and Dragons, and there is a particular setting that I'm particularly fond of. And kind of the primary author of the setting also wrote some books set in this setting. The first book is called City of Towers, The Dreaming Dark. The second book's The Shattered Land, The Dreaming Dark. They're not good books.
I feel like we just did an accidental Kindle challenge again.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like I said, they are very like trashy pulp fantasy. Not very good. The series of books that I'm reading now, they're kind of like little. If they put them all together, it'd be one book, but they published them kind of like a section at a time. I think it's a topic that's been on our list for quite some time. We talked about this briefly. I'm a big fan of the Shadowrun tabletop role-playing game. And occasionally I get a bee in my bonnet, and they write probably too much fiction also set in that world. And
some of it's pretty good. I have read some of those books. Some of them are really good.
Yeah. This is a series called The Frame Job. And why it's interesting, it's broken into 6 parts. And each of the 5 parts follows one particular character who is, if you know anything about Shadowrun, they're a particular member of the Shadowrunning team. And the reason I kind of fell into this trap is the Shadowrun 6 World Beginner box comes with pre-made characters, and they're the characters from the story. So I'm actually on part 5 right now, which covers Zip File, the team's Decker. Again, the books, like some of them are really good. Part 4, where they cover Frostburn, the team mage, it was just awful. It was hard to read. It took me way too long to get through those like 100 pages because, like, sometimes, like, I wanted to get through it, but it became a chore. It just was not a fun read. I'm hoping part 5 is a little better, but I'm invested. I'm going to finish them all.
Okay.
Now, have you read anything else this summer, Drew?
Yeah, I've got a few. So the 2 books that I put a lot of time into this summer, there were 2. The first it's called Rising Tide, The Untold Story. So before I read you this title, understand that the books that I enjoy the most are usually nonfiction and just books that are about history, particularly history from when I was younger. So a lot of Cold War history, right? Because I made mention that I read a lot about Chernobyl and stuff like that. So this book was called Rising Tide, The Untold Story of the Russian Submarines That Fought the Cold War. And it is a nonfiction kind of biography book about the Russian Navy, in particular how it developed its submarines kind of before and after World War II, the games that were kind of played under the seas during the Cold War with Soviet and American submarines. And it tells some really good, riveting stories about all the things that can basically go wrong with submarines kind of happen to the Soviets. So there's a lot of tragedy in there. There's not a lot of humor in it, but it has a lot of anecdotes from some people that served on Russian submarines, and it's pretty insightful. And they go into some technical studies of things like the Kursk accident and some of the other submarine accidents that they had and how they tried to achieve parity with American submarines and sonar and things like that. So it was a really good read. If you're into military history / biography / nonfiction things, I definitely can recommend it. And the other book that I'm currently working through right now is a book called The Doomsday Machine. It's Confessions of a Nuclear War Planner. Really, really dark book. So what's really interesting about this book is 2 things. The first is it's written by a guy named Daniel Ellsberg. Does that name sound familiar to you? Yeah.
It's ringing a bell, but I don't know why.
So Daniel Ellsberg was the guy that leaked the Pentagon Papers. He was the guy. He was the guy that leaked the Pentagon Papers about Vietnam. And he used his top secret clearance because of the type of work that he was doing to obtain that information. Now, the other thing he did was, before he did all that, he was working for a company called RAND, which RAND, which is just really really short for research and development. And the RAND Corporation is a contractor, and they were really involved with helping build up America's nuclear arsenal and doing studies on nuclear war. And what really is fascinating about this book is that, Daniel Ellsberg was young in his career, and he was being asked to review war plans, and he was reading things that basically came out to be these American nuclear people in the Air Force and Strategic Air Command thought that a nuclear war with the Soviets was winnable. So they ascribed to this theory that if you struck first and you struck hard enough, there wouldn't be anything left to fight a nuclear war with the Soviets, or if you engaged in theater-based nuclear combat versus global nuclear combat, that you could use that to deter and stop the Red Army from rolling across Europe and basically taking everything over, including Berlin. So he was like shocked to read some of these things. And some of the other stuff he uncovers and he talks about is how, in some points in the book, he talks about how the president was basically out of the loop. Like, launch authority and the idea of striking the enemy with nuclear weapons should rest with the president. The problem is the president, at least back then, when he was doing this research and working in this capacity, didn't know a whole heck of a lot. And even though it is not supposed to be, you're not supposed to delegate nuclear control, they absolutely delegated nuclear control to like battlefield commanders. Like he would go to these remote army bases, like places like in Korea, close to China or North Korea. And he would interview these base commanders that were at these wayward air bases where nuclear weapons were stored. And he would go to them and say, well, when would you use nuclear bombs? And he would say, if I got authority from command to load my planes up with nuclear bombs and fly into China and drop them, we would do that. And he would then press the issue, and he said, well, what if you were out of contact with your superiors? What would you do? And he goes, well, it depends. If there were signs of war and I was out of touch with my commanders, I might load up my planes with nuclear bombs and drop them. Never mind if there were communication problems like atmospheric interference or other things. There were situations like that he was uncovering. So the Doomsday Machine is kind of broken into parts, where the first part he talks about his historical work, basically trying to convince the people, decision makers like the Joint Chiefs of Staff, like, look, you got to get a handle on how we're handling and storing and treating and using nuclear or not using nuclear weapons, right? Then the rest of the half of the book is he talks about when he was doing this during the Cuban Missile Crisis and how so many things were spiraling out of control. And then he talks about, the basic theory and premise around fighting a nuclear war and what is reality versus expectations on paper that people do studies about. So it's a hard read because of the way he writes and the way he calls back to anecdotes. It's a hard read, but it is utterly fascinating and a little bit chilling. So I just finished that the other day. It took me a couple months to read because I would kind of read here and there, but it was a really, really good book and I really enjoyed it. So if you enjoy that type of topic, I really, really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we're reading. If anybody has similar books that they want to recommend, so Nikki, if you've got books that given what I just said and the fact that I like The Handmaid's Tale and some of this other stuff, if you've got recommendations for us, we'll absolutely read it and give it a review. I mean, what's the worst we could do?
We can have a podcast book club. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing I want to talk about before we call it a night.
Okay.
My board game table's here.
I've seen some pictures.
Yeah.
Tell me all of the little intricate details. I want to hear everything.
Yeah. I wish I would have led with this sooner. I totally forgot to put it on the dock. So I think I've made mention before that I ordered a board game table. It took just under 3 months from me placing the order for it to be completed and shipped. It arrived at my house. What day was that? I think it was like Monday. It arrived this Monday, and we're recording this on a Thursday. So it arrived on Monday, and it came via freight carrier. So a big truck pulled up to my house. They used the lift gate to bring it down, and they used a pallet jack to bring it into my garage. So when it shipped, it was in two parts. The first part was the tabletop, which is, where the playing surface is and everything, and the drawers are attached to the cup holders and things like that. And then there was a separate box for the pedestal legs. So it was in 2 pieces, but it was all packed on this pallet. And the tear weight of the pallet, Paul, do you want to take a guess?
400 pounds?
Just shy of 350 pounds.
Wow.
So, but that was the that was the legs and the top.
Okay.
So the pedestal legs don't weigh very much. I was able to carry these on my own. I was able to get the table into my house. I basically had to put like a towel down and drag it through my hallway so it didn't scratch.
Wow.
But I did get it in the house, and then I had a very strong friend come over, and we put it together. Assembly was really, really easy. There were just some wing nuts that basically attach. If you've ever put together 2 big pieces of furniture, it's just, lag bolts and wing nuts and a washer. The drawers and everything don't come in it. They were wrapped separately, so you have to basically slide those in separately. They don't ship with them installed. The cup holders, same deal. I got it all hooked up. So the configuration I went to, if I have anything that I would do differently, first of all, with this thing now in my living room, I realized I probably could have gone just a little bit bigger. I probably could have gone another 1/2 inch in width and maybe another 1/2 inch in length. I'm not saying that I'm unhappy with the size that I got. Wow.
Phrasing.
Yeah, right. Story of my life. But you listen, you play the hand you're dealt. It's good. I think it'll be able to play most, if not all, of my games. I think some of the bigger games, like something like a Gloomhaven, probably isn't gonna fly on there, but or like Armada or something.
Yeah, it's fine.
You get it. The other thing is that I had a little bit of FU money to throw at this thing, so I got the installed LED lighting, which sounds cool and looks cool. The problem is it's just a little too bright.
Oh.
So when you're sitting at the table playing a game, this LED strip kind of runs around the inside ring of the table, and it's just a little too bright. You can dim it, and it looks okay, but if you were sitting there playing a game and it's in your field of vision, it is kind of frosted, it's like a frosted strip, but on medium or high brightness, it's more of a distraction. It's more of a hindrance than a help, I would say.
Does it cause like a glare or like on cards and things like that?
No.
Too bright in the eyes?
Yeah, so if you were looking at a hand of cards on the table, this LED strip is in your field of vision.
Got it.
I think if you were playing a game where you weren't seated at the table and you were standing up more over the table, maybe it's for that. But it's got a phone app because, of course, software's in everything. I can control it, and I can change the color and the brightness. It can respond to music or microphones.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but I don't think I'll use it that much other than to show it off as like a centerpiece of the room if I want some extra light. I don't necessarily see me using it while I'm playing a game. So I probably could have gone a little bit bigger. I probably didn't need to do the LED lighting, but it was too cool of an option to not get. I probably would have had regrets not getting it and fear of missing out versus getting it and then being unhappy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're free tomorrow, you should come over at lunch to check it out.
I have plans tomorrow for lunch, but yeah.
Boo.
I know.
You people eater. Who are you taking to lunch?
I'm not. I have a new person starting on Monday. I'm going out.
Right.
I'm going out. I'm having lunch with him beforehand, just kind of touch base, and
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you're being a good manager.
Yeah.
You're exercising. You're exercising your disc profile.
Yeah. Yeah. Influence.
You're establishing the bamboozle early.
Exactly.
All right. So more details to come on the board game table. I know that if you follow me on Twitter, and I'm on Twitter at Pitford, you could probably see some pictures of the table. Paul, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter at Paul Baylor. That's BAHLER. You can find the podcast at Doing Best Pod on Twitter and at doingtheirbest.com.
Yep. Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure, buddy. We will talk to you all next week.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.